I'm Cornelius J. Troost, the author of Apes or Angels, Darwin, Dover, Human Nature, and Race. This book is not generally available except on the internet by way of Amazon.com or apesorangels.com, just one word, apesorangels.com. This book is, as I told you in the first segment, controversial because it deals with two dangerous ideas. The first dangerous idea was the one that was part of a book called Darwin's Dangerous Idea, which was written by Daniel Dennett, a philosopher, who talked about the position of evolution as a process that can be interpreted essentially one way, and that is naturalistically, that it contains mechanisms that are interpreted scientifically so that it makes it unnecessary to use any other explanation for the events in nature. Since evolution by natural selection explains the appearance of all forms of life on Earth, from microorganisms to humans, by the same fundamental mechanism, it essentially precludes anything metaphysical or theological as unnecessary. It doesn't mean that you can't explain things as people do routinely through the use of biblical explanations or their own personal theological explanations. However, these explanations, as far as the scientist is concerned, add nothing to the evolutionary explanation of how particular species arose and why certain animals have a particular coloration, for instance, a camouflage mechanism, why some reproduce much more rapidly than others, and so on. Biological explanations are, in a way, autonomous, and Darwin discovered these mechanisms, and they are self-sufficient as far as the scientist is concerned, making it extremely difficult for those that want to intercede in natural events with things like prayers that people do routinely, and yet these personal explanations are, in terms of science at least, completely unnecessary and add nothing to human understanding. So the first dangerous idea is simply part of life everywhere, because science is universal, and the scientific basis for the evolution of life on Earth is well established. It's in textbooks everywhere. It's accepted across the board in natural sciences, and there no longer is a debate on the basics of Darwinian evolution. There's a lot of debate, though, over more sophisticated aspects of evolution, such as the actual mechanisms involved in speciation. And there is still work to be done on a variety of genetic mechanisms underlying the evolutionary process, even though most of the primary mechanisms are well understood at this point. So the first dangerous idea is pretty obvious, and one can debate it all they want, but Dennett, I think, is essentially correct in that it is sort of a blow in general against theology. Secondly, the dangerous idea that I'm espousing is simply taking Darwin at his word. And looking at Darwin's 1871 book, The Descent of Man, I find clear evidence that he believed in significant racial differences, even though he was not a racist, and in fact he was absolutely sickened by the slavery that he saw in South America during his voyage of the Beagle in the 1830s. And so Darwin really was essentially a genteel, liberal British gentleman, and saw no virtue to slavery whatsoever. However, he was objective enough in his biology as a naturalist to appreciate that human differences are human differences, and that they can be biologically based as well as created by culture. So the second dangerous idea is the one that will not be discussed publicly in America today, except under very controlled circumstances, and really the atmosphere is suppressive, repressive, and does not allow for genuine discussion in an honest way. The best example of that is James Watson and his cruel and really indecent treatment after he talked about IQ differences between whites and blacks in an interview in London on a book tour that he was on. Watson is a Nobel laureate and the most famous geneticist in America. He was sort of making off-the-cuff comments. However, they were the same conclusion that is a psychological fact. We have oceans of testing evidence of differences between whites and blacks on the basis of IQ tests, which amount to about 1 standard deviation or 15 points between them. And that has held up for many, many decades. That's just a reality that one has to live with. Asians come out a few points higher than non-Asiatic whites, and Ashkenazi Jews come out considerably above, 12 to 15 points higher, almost a standard deviation higher than the Gentile whites in America. So IQ is nowhere near even among almost any groups you measure. Watson was castigated and basically ignored by most of the mainstream media. They felt better not to give him any publicity whatsoever. He also talked about the sad prospects for Africa in the future. He meant general conditions of societies in Africa. And as you know, there are constant reports of rebel warfare and all kinds of horrors, Darfur and others. And this goes on. There's mass rape going on. It was on television today, in fact, a report of mass rape in the Congo. These are reasons why he made a negative prognosis, and he was castigated for that as well. So any talk of differences that are racial differences that might be genetic in origin are totally anathema today. And in future talks, I will go into this in a little more depth. Thank you very much.